Okay, welcome everyone back to another episode. So excited to get my second episode out, and thanks everyone again for watching my first episode. I really appreciate it. It's been so much fun, and I can get these weird, wacky ideas out onto a cool canvas for people to see. Our next one here, this is going into, as you can see, it's potions and brews. So we are going into an alchemist lab here and seeing what we can cook up. No pun intended. But yeah, I'm super keen to jump into this one. As we start seeing here, I start drawing up the plans and seeing what this laboratory is sort of going to look like. I wanted to really try some texture walls and some floorboards with a mixture of everything. I really do love the wooden walls and things like that I've done in the past, but I really wanted to give a crack at like some stone walls with some mortar in between and just try and give that a crack and see if I can do it. So see if I can. I really do like this hobby tool. This hobby tool's been fantastic for cutting up everything I sort of have needed so far with the project. It's really small and precise. You can do little cuts, big cuts, whatever. But yeah, you just draw your lines up or whatever. I could have probably set up my saw and done a saw or something like that. But just sitting it down at your desk and just doing a little bit of hobby of just cutting some really nice little boards, I don't know, it's quite therapeutic, it's quite nice. It's just like a multi-tool kit. I think you can get it from Bunnings, so fantastic little tool. Now, the trying to keep this sort of L-shaped little nook together, I was struggling to figure out how I was going to actually just keep it together and keep it all nice and sturdy, because there's no really, full boxed areas of keeping it sturdy, etc. And it's open topped as well, and open to the front and open to one side. So it's like, okay, how are we going to do this? So what I decided to do was I'll glue them all together, all the sides and stuff, and then we're going to put some brackets in. So I wanted some metal brackets, sort of it's just extra support to keep everything nice and sturdy. But what I needed was like fairly flat and bendy metal material. So what I've done is I went and found a what's it called? A Christmas decoration for cutting cupcakes and cookies, etc. Um, I told Nikki after I cut them up, so that I sort of, you just ask for forgiveness instead of actually doing, can I ask for permission? But so they got me a little bit of trouble. But I told her that we can get plenty of these cookie cutters around the place, so I think we're gonna be okay. So but it's the cookie cutters were like these cookie makers were very thin metal, very bendy. So I thought, okay, I can work with this, and I couldn't cut it with anything I had, which was fine. So what I decided to do was just bend back and forth, trying to get that friction and let it snap naturally by itself. So took some extra time, took a fair while to do it, but the brackets came up really nicely, and once hammering them into place and where I needed to go and gluing them in, the whole project was far sturdier, and it felt so good. Floorboards was so fun. So I wanted to make them all mix matchy, of course, and different layers and different areas, but it came out a real treat actually. So I made them all different funky spaces and spacings and cut them all up to different sizes. And then I tried to do it a little bit with a pin vise of screwing in obviously the nail holes of each plank, but that was just going to take me, by God, forever. And sometimes the drill would just catch on something and it would lift a little bit more of the plank up or do some more damage than I thought it was going to do. So what I decided to do is get like a little pin, little needle thing, and get my little hammer out and just do like a little bit of, nail chisel work on each nail where I need it to form, and it actually came up really fun, and it's actually quite relaxing. So once you get into the stream of things of punching all the nails into the actual floorboards itself, it's actually really fun to do. And at the end, you can see the work you've done for all the nail holes everywhere. Just made it far more natural, and I'm very happy with that result. Super happy. The walls, I was super keen to do the stonework with the mortar with the walls, and trying to do the planks in between. I really wanted it to fit well with the floor itself also, so I use similar planks for that. When I'm doing these things, I intend to just creating on the spot, and I am just seeing what sticks on the fly, seeing what happens, and this is what I came up with for this one. So I went for downward slats and things, and then I left some really nice big areas for the mortar and stone they'll be the feature. And then, but what it did leave me with is that the sticks weren't long enough to get to the top of the top of the roof. So what I decided to do is, let's use the big planks here to really flesh out the large parts of the actual wall itself and make sure it's it looks structural and things. And then for the very tops, I was going to do a bunch of little matchstick stuff to create a bit more of a thatched sort of braced roof with all these different little poles everywhere, and just so the roof just looks like it's being supported by all these different intricate designs. Sort of if you'd go into an alchemist lab and this is quite a high ceilinged alchemist lab, so once you look up top, it's you've got all these different ceilings and beams and different things going on, and I think it adds more character to the whole piece in itself. So it was so much fun to do, creating this and just seeing it, how it eventually came up, even without paint and everything like that. The structure of it just felt really homely and nice. It just felt awesome to do. So I was super proud of this wall work and the ceiling work. So I'm really, really happy with this. Again, we get back to my hammer and chisel idea. So we get back into nailing this all down, and again, just like the floorboards, the nails for the holes for the wall planks and things on the side of the wall, it just again made it come alive. It felt fantastic. We get cracking into the stone wall. Now this is the idea I had before I started the project, because I just really wanted to try a stone wall. I wanted to really give it a go with a bit of mortar in between and just see if I can get that feel, right? See if I can really get that nice stonework feel. I did this with tin foil. Now I know I've made rocks and stones out of tin foil before. That's fine for more natural looking, boulders and things like that, and mounds and things for actual, outside and little hilltops and things. But I thought the same idea could be applied when doing stone for stonework on the side of the wall. So all you're really having to do is you create that little stone or that little mound or something like that, and then you hammer it down so it's a nice flat piece of surface. So when you see a stone wall or something like that in the, out there in real life, it's all very flat stone. It's not really poking out as much because that would come into the actual interior of the house, etc. So a lot of the stones on the inside for the stonework are all flat, but they're raised up a bit. That's just like maybe half an inch out of the wall, so they actually do have that stonework feature. So I thought, well, if I make a stone out of tinfoil and then I hammer it down flat, that way it's sort of the same sort of idea that I'm going for, that I've got in my head, and then way I can then stick that to the walls, and then in between all that I apply my plaster and mortar to make it look real of coming out of the actual stonework. So it actually came up really beautiful. At the start I wasn't too sure. I was like, oh shit, what have I done? But as I progressed and got the mortar inside and painted the mortar on with a nice brush, it just felt, yeah, it sort of came together. And then after I painted it, oh man, it just went from, you know, oh, I'm not sure what I'm doing, and I'm a little bit like, what have I done, to then being like, alright, once we paint this, this could actually be really beautiful. So let's give it a crack and let's see. Now, in the stonework area, you can tell at the very start when I started doing the mortar, I used like a little G-dub tool that's like for, you know, moving around green stuff or green, you know, that green stuff, liquid green stuff, etc. But straight away, I was like, this doesn't feel right at all. I needed to get that. I needed a brush, essentially. I needed a brush to get around the different mortar in the different area, to really push it in, to get into the gaps where I wanted to be, but also for the mortar to look at that swish look. So, as we see at the end here, it just sort of makes the whole piece come together with the mortar. The tinfoil and the patches there, they look alright, but once the mortar's in and you start seeing it come alive, it felt really lovely, and it felt like a really cool milestone. I was like, okay, I think I'm at this next point. Oh, here we go. We get into the painting, and I'm excited. I love this side of it. Everyone knows I love painting, so when I get to this point, it's like I know the features, I know the colours I've been thinking about since the start of the project. I think about all the different things that I can do with colours, and colours just really are a game changer. They just make everything so beautiful. It was really cool, and I knew which direction I wanted to go. So yes, I play it on bit by bit, and I make it up as I go, but I know what I'm going to create. And when I think about wood and the sort of atmosphere I want with this alchemist lab, is the alchemist lab, I want it to be like a dark, not, I wouldn't say dingy, but well used lab. Like I want it to be look well used, damp and different, and look a little bit more spooky. So instead of having like a traditional just straight up brown floorboards and things, I want things to be shown as, okay, things have been spilt on this, things have been done on this, it's very different, it's you know, it's grimy, it's grungy. So let's put some colour into it. I put some greens, some like turquoise greens into it, which really made the floorboards sort of pop alive and come. There's some areas that I don't go hard out into the painting of, and it leaves some of those green and dark patches coming through, and it felt so lovely, felt really nice. And it's I coat everything now in grey first, and then that sort of is the undertone for all the other colours that we got coming through, which just feels really cool. So very excited at this point, so excited. Now this is the green I was talking about. So this is the green turquoisey colour I decided to go with because I know the contrast that I'll be slapping on over top will really bring the green into more of a deeper feel, plus it'll make those darker areas even more dark. So this turquoise green was, even before I put the contrast down to make the wood colour come through, was already making it like a spooky Sin City sort of feel, which felt really cool. But no, you'll see the transition I get here from this green here to then going onto the floorboards. It felt so beautiful to do. It felt like I was waving a magic wand. It was going over the scenery piece, and it just felt like every piece of it just came alive, and it felt so beautiful to watch. So the magic comes in when the contrast is applied to the piece, but then another magic happens when you dry brush and keep going on top of that contrast. So I really wanted to make these floorboards, yes, they look nice and grungy, and dark areas and green areas have come everywhere, but the next part I know was going to set this apart from looking for just floorboards to being worn floorboards, and to really get that depth and movement on the floorboards. So I wanted to leave the upper areas, so the planks on the walls and the sides and the ceiling and things, I wanted to leave that as they're not being stepped on, they're not being trodden on, they're not being, played around with too much, etc. So they're not as worn out as the ground, so that's fine. Dry brushing, especially wood textures and things like that, over top of your contrast after you've done to really bring those extra features out of the floorboards and everywhere, it can really make your piece come from just feeling like, oh, that looks beautiful, to being like, oh wow, that just really comes alive. I love the floorboards, the way it looks. When I dry brushed these floorboards, I focused more towards, when I was starting, towards the nail and the grooves where the actual floorboards met themselves, trying to pick up the edge of those floorboards to really give the floorboards more definition, and you could really see every single plank that was in this feature, but also going with the grain back and forth so that it still tied it in for being nice flowing floorboards that you could see once were very beautiful floorboards that were laid down at earlier times. So yeah, super happy with this. It's come up beautiful. It's mortar time. So we get stuck into the mortar now. I wanted them to look very contrast to each other. So I made the stones just plain, very dark, and I wanted the mortar because there's more, how do I say, there's more wrinkles, waves, texture in the actual mortar itself. I wanted that to more come alive. So I want the mortar to come alive, and I want the stonework to be just a dull area that is a really good contrast to it. So I wanted the mortar to really seep out and be like pop. So that's what we got going on here. And I just used a small, really small stiff bristle brush to get in between the cracks, and then I go around with a really light colour with a small, really small brush just to really highlight the areas and just make it nice and poppy. So didn't take too much, just really nice and effective. Alright, we got bookshelves inbound, and I do the same thing as I did last time with making these lovely bookshelves, but I wanted to make them a little bit more looking natural. So because they're not so hidden. The last diorama they were quite hidden, where this one they're actually quite out in plain sight. I wanted the shelves on the bookshelves to actually look like they've been held up. So I put on either side of them is a little undercarriage bridge part, so they'll just sit on top of that, which is fine. But what that did, and it comes later when I actually start painting and things, is it actually kept confusing me. So I put the bookshelf up one way, then I'm like, oh no, it's actually around the other way because they're upside down. So because I actually do have an upside down or not upside down now, so that is a thing. So yeah, they keep confusing me, but I got there in the end, and they come up really beautiful, and they really do set the tone for the whole alchemist. They do cover up some of the stonework, of course, that is just naturally going to happen, but at least they tie in really well with the overall scene, and it does make it come alive. So it was really good, well worth it to do a fair few of these bookcases to make it really fill the room up. Back into painting, and we're painting these beautiful bookshelves. Again, similar to what I did last time, start out really dark for those shadowy areas, build up the browns, then build up into more of a like tan, really light colour. You can even get into some flesh colours for your final tones. Just really makes them look really nice. Yeah, not much else to go on this one. It's just these furniture really do make up majority of the overall feel, and starting off from black and then giving it some dry brushing of some different colours can really help you bring out some great tones that you want to do. So if you're ever experimenting with wooden furniture and things like that, just start off with black, give it a bit of a dry brush or a bit of a zenithal, spray from the top down, and that'll just give you some overall area or look that you want to go. And definitely experiment with some different colours of your choice, like some pinks, some greens, some yellows, some oranges. Put that in there, then put some contrast over top, and you'll really see some natural wood effects and wood colours come through your contrast, and it really makes them just pop. And by contrast, you could use probably snakebite leather, you could use brown. You could use even agrax for shade. But if you really want to get that depth, then I'd probably go for more of a contrast than a shade. Yeah, and it really brings that wood coming out really beautifully for you, and your projects will go from, oh, there's like a bit of furniture in the background or whatever, to be like, oh shit, this is now coming alive. This looks fantastic. So have an experiment with some colors and see how you go. Now, what makes an alchemist shop, or potions and brews? Where do we get the inspiration from that from? It's just like a whole lot of stuff in there. I think for me, that's what makes an alchemist, like potions and brews. What this episode's all about is about. It's about having a whole lot of different things, quirky, crazy different things in a alchemist sort of workshop area, and making it come alive, really. So as I started getting into some of my bits boxes, which is a fair bit, I was looking for skulls, I was looking for chains, I was looking for shields. I found some like wheels, I found some different quirky wings and all sorts of different stupid voodoo crazy things that I could hang up everywhere, which was fantastic. I was really happy I found all that. And what it ended up coming down to is like, okay, cool. How do we plan out this table? What's going on this table? Okay, what's going on this other table? What sort of different experiments are being done? So we've sort of got this weird slubbery, slimy concoction that's brewing and is going off on the left-hand table, and then on the right-hand table we've just got this sort of weird, disgusting, soupy brown mix. Who knows what she's making up there, but it's obviously not good. Or it actually might be really good. It might be like kava, it might be alcohol, so might be drinking a whole lot of kava. But who knows what she's making, right? So yeah, I found a little hourglass that I could put on the table as well, which felt fantastic for a timer. And then a whole lot of these really beautiful flowers that I just got from a cheap shop that was just like, they're just bunches of flowers, and I was like, and I started pulling them off, and I was like, oh my god, I can just like make all these little bunches everywhere. And painting these flowers was actually really, really fun to do. Again, starting off black, but then painting on all sorts of different colours, making blues, then again taking that blue and going up to a flesh tone colour. That's what set that one apart, which was, it felt beautiful when that happened. So then I'd started replicating it for all the others, doing flesh tone for the top coats and stuff, and slowly all the concoctions, all the different potions and things I could cook up, and skulls and things, ended up filling out this whole place, and it really felt really cool. And then also, of course, I expanded and made the job much harder for myself by implementing in, I was like, oh, I should probably have more happening around the ceiling area, so why don't we put in some sort of racking system that's got a bunch of stuff hanging off it. I delved into the bits box again and this other one, and of course I found a whole bunch of poles and different wood materials that I could use for this, so I ended up making a whole other project of just making this whole racking system of coming out of the wall, and it come up exactly how I wanted it to, so it was fantastic. It was worth the time, but my gosh, when you start these projects, your mind just wants to keep on creating and keep on going, so it was actually quite funny. So yeah, and I was kicking myself. I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I making this more harder? But it made the overall feel of the alchemist shop more busy and impactful, and I really love that, so I'm really glad I did it. Taught myself a lesson here. Not everything, especially if it's big things like this that are quite rigid and long and flat, super glue is just not going to cut it, because you can't just get a good proper flat surface to stick behind it, because I can't quite see or can't quite get to. Because it was quite large and I wasn't getting the right areas, it just wasn't working. So I went and got some actual, gap filler stuff to really. You need that extra. How do I say? That extra girth of the actual glue to seep down into where it has to go and to encompass everything to really make it stick. And super glue was definitely just not doing that for me with how many cracks and crevices and different things I had. I had to go for this, so I got the old nail gun out and went for this much thicker filler that I went for, and sure enough, that helped a heck of a lot better. So, and once that's set, it was fantastic like concrete. Now, once I was all set up and laid out, I had these two tables at the front that were obviously going to be her sort of like operation tables where she made her different potions or different creations were being spawned on there. So I made one as in like some sort of weird slug making machine. So I wanted that to sort of have like a little bit of a glow or a bit of a shine or something about it. So as it's brewing and shining and cooking underneath, it's creating these festering bugs and slime that's leaking off the table, and she's gonna have to probably she sort of left that table alone though, hasn't she? So she's gonna have like a little bit of a slug problem in a little bit of time. So, but that's fine, that's okay. Um, and then the other table, she's brewing a sort of like a drinking mixture of some sort of potion or some sort of weird bad poison. So that's what's going on the other table. So I need to actually figure out how to make this glow effect underneath. So I thought let's drill some holes and just try and make the hole big enough for a light to come through, do my old idea, and then create a area where I could slide the battery into where it turns on, but also enough friction, just enough to keep the battery there by putting that little stick, that little matchstick in place, so that I can push it in. Not much friction if it's just sitting there like a diorama should. It shouldn't get bumped or anything for the battery to come out, but it's enough friction to keep the battery inside the actual light to keep it going for the glowing effect. So it came up alright, but yeah, it was definitely different. I feel like I probably should have maybe painted it maybe a red or a different colour for like a translucent red, but it worked out alright, and just looks like something's brewing or cooking underneath the actual thing itself, which is kind of mysterious, so I quite like that. Now, the last thing, and this was right at the end of the project, and I put it all together, and I was like, oh, she's a bit small. I don't think she can reach these top shelves. So, what good is a high-ceilinged alchemist brew chemist shop where you can't even reach your ingredients? It doesn't make sense, Richard. So, what I thought I would do is let's make some ladders for her so she can climb up to where she wants to be and do her thing. So I've made these ladders to be just extra little areas for her to jump up on and have some fun, and she can get any ingredient she wants everywhere now. And I thought, well, one ladder, two ladders, I think just one ladder would be enough. So just made one big ladder, and what I've done here is made the ladder from scratch and things, but I really wanted to make it like a little bit more of an authentic ladder of back then. So what I've done is I've made the ladder obviously as normal, but then I've wound some like cotton or some thread around each joint to make it look like it's been held together by by the ropes themselves. So it took a bit of time to learn how to do it, but the Games Workshop little filler tool, that little plastic tool, came in super handy here. So before I was trying to do it with my fingers, and I was like, this is just ridiculous. I can't get around I can't get inside, this is just, it's like tying a tiny shoe every single time I'm doing it. It's like, this isn't working. So what I thought I'd do is make one long thread and weave it through everywhere to make it look all everywhere, all chaotic. But it actually worked out pretty damn cool. And the G-Dub tool of just using that little tool of threading it through the middle, then coming around the right hand side, tying it, like overwounding and up downing, trying to keep it tight every time. But that little tool came in so handy for just ducking it in and out of little corners and things, that it really paid off, because I really, really did love having like a ladder aspect, and I think she really needed it for the diorama to sort of just finish off that little finishing touch. So yeah, it felt great.